A friend of mine had a powerful plant medicine ceremony, but following that, she had panic attacks for months. And it wasn't necessarily about the plant medicine ceremony, but that her nervous system wasn't prepared for what the plant medicine ceremony brought up. And it's not just about plant medicine ceremonies. Re-traumatisation and feeling overwhelmed for weeks or even months after can happen with intense meditation practices, meditation retreats, cathartic breath work, cathartic emotional releases in Tantra, or any cathartic process that involves shaking or shouting as well. And the problem isn't per se these practices. It's about the preparation, the pacing, and the integration that makes all the difference. And without those foundational pieces, if you have a sensitive nervous system or you're not connected to your body, you're dissociated, whether it's spiritually bypassing or you're in the head as an intellect, you have an intellectual job, whether it's that and you're not in your body. When you do a bigger process and it brings up big emotions or fear or whatever it is that was stored in the body, if it brings it up too fast, too soon, it can go past your therapeutic window of tolerance, leaving you feeling worse than before. I'm Naomi Galinsky. I'm a somatic trauma therapist and nervous system educator. I help high-functioning, emotionally intelligent women who are stuck in burnout, overwhelm, and with a chronic illness regulate their nervous system so that they can reclaim their life. If you're new to this channel, welcome. And if you've been following me, it's good to have you back. Today, I want to share why re-traumatization happens in healing practices and how we can do deep healing without reliving the trauma or re-traumatizing yourself. I get that. I get that really well. How when you're feeling anxious or you have fear or there's just something emotional going on or you're sick or you're just miserable and you just want that quick fix that makes you feel better. And these cathartic practices, cathartic breath work, big emotional releases, plant medicine ceremonies can seem so enticing. And I'm not going to speak against those practices because for some people, they do help. And they do help release and make them feel better. It's just that if you have a sensitive nervous system and you're not ready, your body, your nervous system is not ready for that big of a release or an expansion, for that big of maybe trapped fear, grief, sadness, anger, those things that we haven't felt for decades since we were a child. It might be too much. And I speak from experience because I did it myself. So I'm not judging and shaming anyone for ending up getting overwhelmed or having panic attacks. It happens. For me, when I was recovering from chronic fatigue, the first 4 years, I was pushing myself to heal and it wasn't going anywhere. But I remember going for these big experiences trying to heal and make myself feel better. So I did a 7-day Osho No Mind meditation series, let's say. And if you know Osho No Mind, it's loud. We were speaking gibberish it wasn't 7 full days, but in the evenings for 7 days. We were speaking gibberish. It was loud. And my nervous system was already sensory overloaded by even the smallest sensory input. So I couldn't be in public places. I had to have the curtains drawn most of the time because I was sensitive to light. I was sensitive to seeing lots of things and sound. So being in a room with 20 people who are speaking gibberish and shouting, it was too much. But for other people, as I said, it was a really enlightening experience. It was just not the right thing for me at the time. And the two reasons why we end up getting re-traumatized in these cathartic practices is one, lack of capacity to feel. So I mentioned that one already. So especially if we're not connected to our body and we haven't been connected to all of the emotions that have been repressed for a long time, then it might be overwhelming to all of a sudden open the floodgates, and feel all of that at once. And the second one is overriding your body's limits. So your nervous system communicates with you at what point it's enough. This is enough release, enough opening, enough feeling. And usually it's subtle in its way it's communicating, but because we haven't learned how to listen to these subtle cues, how to be connected to these subtle cues, we override. And for those of you who are high-functioning, overachieving women, like I was in my 20s or up to my 20s, maybe into my mid-30s as well, we are so good at overriding our need for a rest, to take breaks from things, overriding our needs to eat or go to the bathroom when we need to. We hold it in, we push through, and we're so good at pushing through. But again, that gets us into trouble when we've pushed our body to a place of burnout, chronic fatigue, maybe chronic pain or other syndromes, then our sensitivity is higher and our capacity is even lower. What does building capacity then look like? Building capacity to sense the body, building the nervous system capacity to feel. It happens in small drops, and it requires slowing down and doing neurosensory or somatic practices that help your mind, you connect with sensations in your body through awareness, and that uses our mind, but it doesn't use that thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, analyzing part of our brain. It's a different part of the brain. And it can be done through touching and noticing sensations as we touch, or it can also be done just bringing the awareness into the body. We can notice the sensation of the contact between our body and the chair. There are many ways, but it takes time to slow down, and it also takes time for the mind to switch into awareness mode. And the longer we stay with the body, the more you will notice subtle sensations bubble up. And as we notice sensations, they also shift and move and change, and new sensations appear, some disappear. And that just takes time to sink into that. And through that, once we start connecting through these drops into sensing our body, we start noticing what our yeses and our nos and our maybes are. And this is a language you have to learn with your own nervous system. And at the beginning, you might not understand or know what your body is trying to tell you. And that's where the practice and consistency and repetition come in. And so for me, with chronic pain, the The practices were at the beginning weren't long. They had to be smaller drops, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, because I didn't have more ability to focus and use my brain, even if it was focusing on awareness on sensation in my body. And there would be discomfort that showed up as well in forms of pain, the beginnings of a headache, or maybe I was already in the migraine stage, or my body ached. I have nerve pain going down my neck all the way to my fingertips. And learning to feel and stay with the uncomfortable sensations or the painful sensations without getting overwhelmed by them takes building capacity, and you do it in slow drops. And there's also ways you do it through resourcing I won't go into details, but learning how to feel the pleasant and joyful and neutral sensations, and then going into discomfort and kind of weaving in and out of the two. And yeah, I think I want to talk about the ball of yarn analogy here. When we are syndromal, meaning we have a collection of symptoms, for example, chronic fatigue is a collection of symptoms. There's a tiredness, but there's also the brain being on overdrive. You're still feeling anxiety. You have brain fog, maybe migraines, gut issues, muscle fatigue, nerve pain, and you might have other things as well. Chronic pain is one of those as well, autoimmune diseases. Imagine a ball of yarn with different colored yarns, and each of these threads is a stressor in your life. It can be from a past trauma or chronic stress throughout your adulthood, but imagine it's a ball of stored stressors and trauma. That's basically what's in it's chaos in your system. And what these cathartic practices or plant medicine ceremonies do is they take one of those threads, or maybe they take 10 of them, and they yank it. They try to pull it out, or we try to pull it out because we want to feel better. But what happens when you pull on a thread in a knotted ball of yarn? It gets tight. We make it worse. It gets even tighter. So building capacity means in slow ways we start easing the tension on the outside. We pull a little bit here, we pull a little bit here, through, I'm sensing some ease. So we're creating a bit of ease there. And then maybe at some point we can take an end of a thread and thread it through, and it'll feel better. And taking that ball of yarn analogy, if you've built enough capacity and there's a lot of looseness in that ball of yarn, then yeah, maybe one of those threads can go all the way through because there's enough space to the other side. And then you might be able to handle a bigger wave of emotion that wants to come through. And what happens when you override your nervous system? You end up reinforcing the trauma pattern of overriding your system, overwhelming it, and maybe you dissociate, shut down, or whatever your pattern is. Or in the worst case, you end up with a psychotic breakdown and your psyche splits. And I've heard of that happen, and I wish that upon no one. And if you're already sick, then you are adding more stress to your system, and it takes you longer to heal. It took me, did I even mention it? But with the Osho No Mind meditation, it took me 3 months to get back to where I was before the meditation. A more sustainable way of healing is slowing down, learning to listen to the subtle cues of the body, focusing on building capacity to feel more. And oftentimes we release already a lot of charge, like the ball of yarn analogy. We already have created so much space in the system that maybe you don't need that cathartic big bang release. And so when we're healing, what's super important is that we have a clear intention. That's not one of goal-orientedness of, I want to get rid of this feeling. I want to get rid of how I'm feeling so I can feel better. Because what's happening at that subconscious level when we do that is we're rejecting ourselves. And in therapy, in somatic experiencing, the modality that I'm training in, which is Peter Levine created that modality, and it's nervous system based or nervous system science-backed trauma healing. When you work with a modality like somatic experiencing, then the intention is to befriend those parts of us that are hard to be with, that are scary to be with, that we haven't felt in a while. And the journey is to learn to not be afraid, to not fear the fear. So having the right intention is important, not rejecting yourself. Then the preparation, building the nervous system capacity. So that's part of the preparation. And as you're building the nervous system capacity, you learn not to be afraid of sensation. Because underneath the emotions, underneath the fear, there's a sensation of fear. And what is that? And if you can learn to be with that without needing to get rid of it, then you'll have more capacity to feel bigger things, which is the process part. And you might do processes with a therapist in group work or a cathartic process if that's what you desire. And then the integration part is super key. And I think there's not enough focus on the integration. And integration there are different parts to the integration. But the first one is to, once you've experienced the activation of that emotion or the sensation, there will be a peak. And then you have to wait and give the body time, give the nervous system time to discharge, settle, and complete the process. And that's the first part of the integration after the process. Because if you don't do that, and it's just you're going for peak experiences, it's like release, 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 then nothing is really changing at the nervous system level, and you're just repeating a pattern. And you're going back to the same state, and you feel like, oh, I need to release again to feel better, but you're going back to the same state. But the whole point of healing is that you're not going back to the same state. You're going back to you're going to a new baseline, a more healed, settled, calm, peaceful, joyful baseline, not the same place. And it's in the settling, the discharging, settling, and completion that the deeper nervous system rewiring can happen. So taking the time and resting for the integration part is super important. And then there's another part of integrating whatever you released into your life. So what beliefs do you need to work on letting go of? It's not a one-time process. What behaviors, what patterns do you need to shift? And that is also not a one-time process. A peak experience can give you the awareness of why you're stuck, but you still have to do the consistent work of changing that pattern, and that can take months to a year. Yeah, it's like catching yourself, making a different choice, catching yourself and making a different choice. And other benefits of going slowly in a titrated way, going at the pace of the nervous system instead of doing these big bang emotional releases, is that safety can return to the nervous system when it's ready and it sticks. And when there's more safety in your nervous system, then there's more resilience and you're less reactive. There's more resilience towards if something, and life happens, right? Like life gets painful, stressful, and like emotional stuff happen. That's normal. That's part of life. It's the stuckness that gets us in trouble. But if we can move through these events, these difficult events, without reacting to them, being able to step back, to learn to sit with the sensations and feelings and let them pass. To not react and instead choose an action, have a choice in how to react. That's resilience. And when we do trauma healing properly, then these traumatic experiences, or if we've ended up with a chronic illness, even panic attacks, as scary and as shitty those things feel, when we do the proper nervous system rewiring and healing, it makes us more resilient for the rest of the life. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth happens when we experience challenges, and a challenge that is the right amount of size that we can overcome. Growth does not happen when we're re-traumatizing ourselves with cathartic practices. But when we break it down into smaller, manageable sizes of being able to feel within our therapeutic window of tolerance, then that builds strength and resilience. If this video sparked something in you, then drop a comment and share your biggest takeaway. I'd love to hear. And if this video was helpful, like the video or subscribe so that more people can find this support. And if you want to go deeper with me in this journey of nervous system healing, then check out the links in the description and you'll find more information there.